Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today another build for you. This one is a Shaman Totem build. So totems are doing a lot more damage in the new patch, and while the Storm Totem is doing about the same damage it did in the last patch, maybe got a slight buff to its overall damage, the nice thing is it has other totems that can go along with it to do even more damage, and they're not going to kill your PC either. So we're going to be running the Storm Totem for some lightning damage and cold damage, and then we're also going to be running the new Upheaval skill in Totem form, and we're going to be sacrificing our Thorn Totems to get more damage with the Upheaval Totem, and all of it does work. None of them are bugged at the moment, so you can play this one 100%. Every node seems to be working. So the way it'll work is you basically go and you summon 3 Thorn Totems at a time. That was the happy amount, so that we would get all of our mana back when we summon the Upheaval Totem, and you will sacrifice those 3 totems for the next Upheaval Totem that you proc, and that'll cost all of your mana back, which gives it all back to you. So Avalanche is really the only thing stealing your mana on top of Warcry and Storm Totem. And then the totem will use Upheaval from its location, and it actually does really good damage. Now, I haven't taken this into empowered content too far. We've just been leveling through the campaign. We took it into the end game. We're into the monos. It was doing just fine in level 85 and 90 content, and it still has room to grow. We don't have it geared perfectly, but it does a lot of damage. It's good for single target and clearing AoE. And this is a very active playstyle because you're having to use all the skills. I do have Avalanche on autocast. Until you get your mana in order, you might not be able to do that, but we have very little mana regen on the build. We took all the passive points for it, and we have it on maybe one piece of gear. So the mana is not a huge problem, but sometimes you may have to just manually cast Avalanche here and there. For single target damage, to really maximize upon it, you want to have the Storm Totem out, you want to get 2 Upheaval Totems out, and then you want to use Warcry, which is going to buff all of them with 250% increased cold damage and 200% critical strike chance, which is going to allow them to just maximize that damage, and you're going to see things just absolutely melt. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the skills, the interactions, and exactly how it's spec'd and how it all works. For skills, I'm running Summon Thorn Totem, Upheaval, Avalanche, Summon Storm Totem, and Warcry. For Summon Thorn Totem, we have this set up so that we will, with Groove Mind, have all of our totems be summoned at the same time. This also gives -1 to maximum Thorn Totem, so you can originally have 2 of them by default, and then we have +2 here, which would be 4, minus the 1 from here means we'll have 3. Now this gives a flat mana cost per totem, and our cost right now is 37 for 3 totems. Now that's not bad, because with the 3 points in Memories of Edera, we're gaining back 12 because we're manually casting it, which means we get 36 mana back. So really the true totem cost is 1. And if you add that to our Upheaval cost, which only costs 3 mana, in order for us to summon 3 Thorn Totems and then summon 1 Upheaval to consume those, we're only spending 4 mana, which you will regen in less than half a second. So it really doesn't cost much mana. That's the free part of the game, and then it's going to be Avalanche, Storm Totem, and Warcry that are your real mana spenders. We also have 5 points in Atomic Wisdom to keep that mana efficiency, 3 points in Eternal Force just to unlock the Groove Mind, 1 point in Ancient Power for more damage from them, 3 points in Impale for a chance for them to deal double damage, 1 point in Torrent of Thorns for an extra projectile, and 1 point in Lethal Thicket for some increased crit chance for them, as well as more damage. Now, to be fair, they actually do decent damage, but they're not going to hit anywhere near as hard as Upheaval, so make sure that you can summon 3 of these out, get an Upheaval Totem, summon another 3, get another Upheaval Totem, and then summon another 3 out, and you'll have a total of 5 totems out there, 3 Thorn and 2 Upheavals. Now, the Upheavals don't last very long, so you're basically just putting the Thorn Totems out there, getting ready to summon up another Upheaval once they start disappearing. For Upheaval, we have this set up so that the minions will, or our totem will then use it from its own totem self instead of us having to manually cast it. So while we are manually casting Upheaval, we are just summoning a totem with it is what we're doing, and then it will use Upheaval many, many times from itself. And we basically just have it set up to do as much damage as possible and to be cheap. So our Upheaval cost is actually only 3 mana. If you put 1 more point in Exhaustible, it'll actually cost nothing. It'll actually be free. But we have 2 points in Exhaustible to reduce that mana cost by 4. It also has some Armor Shred chance, 1 point in Mantle Strike for the base crit to be higher on it, 1 point in Crust Rupture for increased critical strike multiplier, 1 point in Upheaval Totems. This is where we now have totems that we're proccing instead of using it manually ourselves. And this gives it a 3-second cooldown, a huge mana cost increase, but that's okay. We have that offset between the negative mana cost and exhaustible and the -5 totem cost when you become a Shaman Master. And then we have 1 point in Stone Thorn Pillar so that we can actually have up to 2 totems. And this also makes it to where they get more damage, 30% more damage per Thorn Totem that you sacrifice for. And we're going to be doing 3 Thorn Totems. You can do up to 5, but we are doing 3 at a time because that's where the mana was happy, and it gives us 90% more damage with them. It basically doubles the damage of the Totem Upheaval. And then we have 2 points in Terrain Delving, 4 points in Natural Weapons, and we are using a staff, so we are giving our totems 120 flat cold melee damage, which really boosts their damage. It's also good for us because using a staff means that we can run our Avalanche and do good damage with it as well. We have 4 points in Glacier Crush. This gives physical penetration and cold penetration, which is doubled with a 2-handed mace. So we've got 80% penetration for both physical and cold, and we are doing both of those. The Upheaval has your physical melee damage from a weapon. It also has the cold damage that we've added from the natural weapons node. Then we've got 2 points in Unstoppable Strength and 3 points in Brutish Engagement, so that the closer your Upheaval is to a target, which is really great against bosses because you can literally put it right on the boss, it's going to do more damage. In this case, 60%. We still have another point we can put in, so we can put that up to 80%. And some people will really want to use Excavating Blow for the AoE, but this makes the mana kind of get out of control. On top of that, they attack 50% slower, and then on top of that, it makes it to where you don't really need it for the AoE, because even though the Fault Lens can only hit a single target, it's still a single target. It's going to be the same, but just slower attacks. We have AoE with both Avalanche and Storm Totem, so there's no need for it, but you can try it if you want. For Avalanche, we have this set up to be converted to cold. It's also going to do more damage, and then it's also the cast and forget type mode where we have it on auto cast, and when we cast it, it just follows us where we run for about 7 seconds. So we got 1 point in Mountain Peak, 1 point in Precision, 1 point in Wild Path, 3 points in Unyielding Storm, 1 point in Hailstorm, 3 points in Naturally Occurring for that mana efficiency, so we could actually keep it on auto cast. 3 points in Harsh Winter, 3 points in Grounding because we have totems active all the time, 3 points in Explosive Impact, 1 point in Mountain's Fury, and 1 point in Frost, so that we have nothing but cold damage with it, which is really nice because now that it's cold damage, it's also spell damage. We have the spell damage leeched as Health Blessing from the Black Sun, so we have a lot of leech going on. Then we have the Summon Storm Totem, which gives us a ton of move speed, and it does really good damage as well. We've got 4 points in Lightning Raider, 3 points in Direct Current, 1 point in Blizzard, 5 points in Icicles, 2 points in Static Field, 1 point in Exploit Weaknesses, and 4 points in Storm Rider, so that when it gets a hit against a shocked enemy or a chilled enemy, since we have it converted to slow, you get that 40% movement speed, and you will feel it the moment it kicks in because it's a bigger boost than haste. And if you have haste at the same time, it's absolutely crazy how fast you start running. And then for Warcry, we have this as a buff to all of our totems. So for this, we have 4 points in Deep War, 4 points in Battle Cry for that increased 100% crit chance for allies, 1 point to convert it to cold, 5 points in Frostclaw for the 250% increased cold damage, and 1 point in Bringer of Winter for another 100% crit chance and chill chance. So when you use this and you hit your totems with it, they're gaining 200% critical strike chance, and they are gaining 250% increased cold damage, which is great for the Upheaval totems because they have the 120 flat cold damage because you're wearing a staff, and it's great for the Storm Totem because it's been converted to cold and doing cold damage. We also have 1 point in Juggernaut, so we're invulnerable for 1 second after casting it, and 3 points in Breath of Edera, so we are healed when using it. For passives, we got 20 points in the base Primalist class. I do want to say that these are not min-max. Feel free to change them around a bit. We were still putting this build together. This is more of like a rough draft of the build since we are only level 70 at the moment. We will continue it farther up into the end game. We got 8 points in Natural Attunement, 6 points in Primal Medicine, 5 points in Hunter's Restoration, and 1 point in Hunter's Emanation. For Beastmaster, 13 points with 8 of them in 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐦𝐩 Strength for that damage taken from nearby enemies to be reduced, and 5 points in Boarheart for the increased reduced damage that you take after you've taken a melee hit. And then we got 49 points in the Shaman, which is our master class, with 5 points in Ancient Stones, 5 points in Silent Protector, 5 points in Fate Carver, 2 points in Stormbringer, 5 points in Ancestral Speed, 10 points in Storm Elder, 4 points in Avatar of Thunder, 8 points in Rune of Awe, 5 points in Protective Circle. And I'd really like to mess around with the Eternal Storm. I've never used this node before because killing a frozen enemy doesn't happen very often. It's not going to happen against bosses and things like that. But because the Upheaval Totems don't last for a super long time, I've been tempted to try, especially since we have both Avalanche doing great damage, and I don't think the Storm Totem will count, but the Storm Totem could freeze enemies for you, which would allow you to kill them with Avalanche. But if we get a kill with Avalanche, even if it's a trash mob and that enemy happened to be frozen, we would allow a random totem to be healed to full, its duration refreshed, and its damage is permanently increased, which would be doubled, and that's doubled for cold damage, which is crazy. So it gets 100% increased damage, it gets its duration refreshed, and then since it is cold damage, it's actually a 200% increased damage. Whether it be the Storm Totem or whether it be the Upheaval Totem that got it, it would actually be really, really powerful. So I've been very tempted to try it and just see how it feels, and if it ever actually even procs or even works. But feel free to try that one. All right, so for idols, for uniques, for gear, again, this is not min-maxed. A lot of the wrong affixes are on a lot of this gear. We literally just leveled this character, and this is what we have. We've got on the Thorn Slinger unique because this gives us +1 to physical skills, so that affects the upheaval for us so that we can get an extra point in there. We have the Bleeding Heart so that we could leech a bunch. We don't really need to use this anymore since we got the Blessing for spell damage, but having both that and the Bleeding Heart has really brought in a lot of leech and increased our survivability. So until we finish capping out our defense, we'll probably continue to wear it. And then for our items, we just have some cast speed for totems. We got some adaptive spell damage. Again, these are low tiers. We're looking at tier 2 and tier 3. You don't need much to make this build start going. We got the same thing for the helm, tier 2 and 2. For the weapon, we are using a horned staff because this gives +1 to all minion skills, which means the Upheaval, the Thorn Totems, and the Storm Totem, they all get plus levels for this, so this is really good for it. And on it, you want to get as much melee cold damage as possible and melee physical damage as possible in the prefix slots because those get added to the Upheaval. And then at the same time, you want the increased minion physical damage because it also has a physical minion tag. So it benefits from all of those stats. So the ultimate weapon would have tier 6 or tier 7 melee flat physical. And then you would have a tier 6 or tier 7 melee cold damage, or you would have a tier 6, tier 7 increased minion physical damage. Those are like the things that you mainly want. You can also get, I believe, minion spell damage on it if you want, and Storm Totem would be boosted from that. So those are your options for the two-handed staff to make it really, really powerful. Then for the rest of our items, we're basically going for cold damage, intelligence, and just trying to get our defense. We are missing quite a bit. We do have +2 levels to Avalanche on our relic. We got really lucky with crafting that. We actually found it with tier 4, and then we didn't have an affix, but it critically struck up to tier 5, which was really cool. And then, of course, just as much health as possible. So again, just trying to get defense in there, just trying to get some minion damage, and of course, trying to get our critical strike avoidance and resist. For idols, nothing super special, but they do have some really cool hybrid ones that you can use. We're getting our critical strike avoidance along with giving plus minion melee critical strike chance, which works for the Upheaval Totems. We're trying to get those as close to possible as having 100% crit, which they don't have, but with Warcry, they're above 50%, which is a lot of crits coming from them. And then our other one, we got a really cool hybrid one. It's got the 2% minion melee critical strike chance, as well as up to 80% increased totem damage, which is a really nice boost for all totems. And then we are going to be doing some hybrid life in here in a couple of slots, and our 1x3 is spell damage if we have a totem, because we do. We're not transformed, so the prefix doesn't matter. There's definitely a lot of different ones. There are some 1x4s that you can get that this one gives vitality and physical resist, but there's some that give up to +4 minion crit chance, which is huge and really nice. So you can definitely build in with horizontal ones or vertical ones. It doesn't matter either way. And then for blessings, we've only got a couple of them at the moment, but again, we have experience, and then we have the spell damage leeches health, which is the big one. Make sure you get that from the Black Sun. But again, we're going to be continuing this build on, and I will put out another finished endgame build guide when we finish it all together. But right now it's in a very good working state, and it does a ton of damage. It worked pretty well for leveling. It was a little rough for leveling when we first started out, but after we got to about level 20 to 25, it started to take off as soon as we had the Upheaval Totems, and they had a little bit of that cold damage. As soon as we got 1 point and that flat cold damage for them. For the character sheet, you can see we have just over 1,000 health. We're only level 70. Our elemental and physical, when we have our totems out, that's when we're going to get a lot of that. So we're not worried about the elemental. Our physical is pretty much halfway covered. We could use a little bit more. It's the poison, necrotic, and void that we're working on. We still need to get those capped. For defense, we do have our critical strike avoidance capped. We still need a little bit more endurance. For our minions, they got about 200% increased damage and not much life. You don't really need the life because you're constantly resummoning them anyways. And then for how to play this build, and I just like to put Avalanche on autocast. That's all you got to do. You can throw on a Storm Totem. It's not going to attack right now because it just doesn't count as an enemy. But we have Avalanche going off, and then we're going to have 3 of our Thorn Totems summoned at once, and then you sacrifice them when you use Upheaval. So it's a 3 and a 1. And it's really that simple. You have your Upheaval Totems, then you can slap out a Warcry. It's going to buff them, and everything's going to get increased cold damage, including us, which is really nice. So a lot of crit chance. They all just kind of synergize really nice, as you can see. But again, all you do, you just go, you summon your 3 Thorn Totems, boom, you summon your Upheaval, which will sacrifice them, and you just keep running through the game like that. That's all you got to do, and because you have Totems always active, you get a damage boost, you get the elemental resist. It's just a really quick, easy, fun playstyle. And again, when you have the Storm Totem out and the Storm Totem hits an enemy and shocks it, and then hits it again, you get 40% increased move speed. So you start moving really, really fast, especially if you have haste at the same time. All right, that's going to be it for this build guide. I hope you guys enjoy this one. It's very nice to finally have a really powerful totem build in the game, especially for the Shaman. It feels really, really good. Hopefully it continues to feel that way as we get to empowered content. As always, stay safe and enjoy some gameplay.